Hello and welcome to the Championship Weekly podcast, a podcast looking at everything happening in the Championship. And today we are focusing on Blackburn Rovers, who've been in the news a lot lately. So we will be delving into the fairly obvious topics I'm sure everybody will be expecting us to talk about. But before we go into all of that, introduce yourself, introduce the podcast. And once again, we are delighted to have you on.
Yeah, so my name's Robert. I'm from the Kidder Street Noise Show on the BRFCS podcast, 4,000 Holes. We used to be our own podcast, but we've all sort of like mingled together for like a team effort. And yeah, we've not really done like a weekly podcast for quite a while, me and my brother, because no one really likes to talk about the performances weekly and it gets a bit tedious, or it has been tedious since we started the podcast. So we tried to go more along the lines of like journalistic episodes based on what's happening behind the scenes, but also 4,000 Holes do like monthly catch up based on like performance and stuff like that. So we've got a wide range of shows. So if you're interested in anything Blackburn Rovers, head to 4,000 Holes on brfcs.com and listen to not just our show, but also everyone else's show on there as well.
And I don't know whether this is a really negative question, but do you miss doing weekly shows where your team is playing well? Because I think back to under Marcus Evans when Ipswich obviously had a poor owner there and we were losing every week and it was just becoming a little bit depressing to cover the club. So do you miss the positivity surrounding everything?
So we started the podcast after JDT got announced as the new manager after Mowbray had left. After 5 years of Mowbray, it had gone quite stale, and me and my brother were both quite excited by the JDT appointment. And that season was brilliant because even when you got beat, there was still like positive signs. You could talk about the football, and the atmosphere around the club was heightened, and everyone felt positive. In recent weeks, like even though Eustace kept us up towards the back end of that season, it was difficult because it was like if Smodic didn't score, there was nothing else positive, and it was getting a bit boring saying, "Oh, Smodic just won us the game again. Smodic just won us the game again." Nowadays, I feel like if you just talk about the performances and the stuff on the pitch, some Rovers fans are getting frustrated at that because it's not enough and it's not the main talk. Like, unfortunately for us at the minute, the games aren't the main talking point. It's usually what happens after the game or in between games that everyone wants to hear about and everyone wants to talk about. So it'd be doing a disservice if we just said, ignore what was happening off the pitch. Let's talk about how good we were or how bad we were last night, because everyone knows how bad we were last night and no one wants to listen to 45 minutes of me telling you how bad we were last night. So we tried to pick up on like key points around the club and then just discuss that. And I feel like, so you're not just regurgitating the same points. I think in a championship season, 46 games, how many times are you going to speak about a left back and a right back's performance? Like, there's probably only, like, for us, if Todd Cantwell doesn't play well, we don't play well. You don't want to say that 46 times a season. If Todd Cantwell plays well, you don't want to say how good he is 23 times and then how bad he was the other night. It gets a bit repetitive, I'd say.
So let's go through some of the fixtures from last night real quickly. We'll only spend about 5 minutes on this before we talk about Blackburn. A team who've really surprised me lately have been Sheffield Wednesday, who drew 2-2 with Birmingham City last night. In fact, Sheffield Wednesday were quite unlucky, really, to end up drawing the game. At the moment, they are doing quite well considering the situation that they're in. They're 22nd, but they're only 3 points off 15th. So let's talk about Birmingham. Have you been a little underwhelmed by them so far this season? There was a lot of expectations on them when they came back up to the Championship. Or are we being a little bit, I don't know, petty by even suggesting that?
I think it's way too early to say. They've obviously signed quite a lot of players. They've got a lot of new, like, fresh legs to bed in. I was really, like, not necessarily excited because I'm not a Birmingham fan, but when they signed Kyogo, I thought he's going to get 25, 30 goals this season because I watched a lot of the Celtic games when he was there, and just the way that he positions himself. And I could see, because when we played them at home recently this season, And he does that he lurks like 30, 40 yards offside. Ball comes down the wing, the winger overlaps him, they square it to him, and the defenders can't catch him up and he scores. And he did that for Celtic 30 times a season. Now, teams are already starting to not necessarily work it out, but if you keep a deep line, like he doesn't even touch the ball, and they can stop the wingers and you stop Kyogo and they don't score that many goals. I put them in my early season predictions. I think I put them in fifth just because they score a lot of late goals, and especially at home, and they did it again last night where they're shooting towards I can't think what it's called, that end, but the main home end at St Andrews. They score a lot of goals late on towards that end, and I think that's going to help them this season. Do I think they'll do as well as I expected? I still think it's way too early. I think you need to give them to at least Christmas, and then the league will start taking shape, and you'll see who's up there and who's down there.
And still, his running and his positioning is absolutely incredible. I know he hasn't necessarily scored too many for Birmingham yet, and again, we are very early into the seasoning. But if anything, some of the runs that he makes is commendable. It is absolutely incredible to watch. Elsewhere in the Championship, Leicester City won, Wrexham won. I've heard some people suggest that Phil Parkinson could potentially be under pressure. In my opinion, they haven't started the season too badly. But Wrexham, what do you make of their start to the Championship season? They're 15th at the moment. They've won 2 of their last 5 league games. It isn't all doom and gloom there, is it?
No, it's not. I just think people are jumping the gun a bit on Phil Parkinson. I think managers like him have got a ceiling when it comes to like this level of football. I think promotion from League One, promotion from League Two, yeah, is like guaranteed. Like he's one of those that will be challenged for you every season. I think when you step up to the Championship and you've got teams coming down from the Prem or teams that have recently been in the Prem, there's a massive step up, and I think Birmingham have found that, but also Wrexham have found that. Will going out and getting a more experienced manager at this level or an even higher level sort out the problems? I'm not necessarily sure, because I don't think they've bought a lot of players, but I don't think they've built a squad. If that makes sense. But yeah, I think Phil Parkinson might have just reached his ceiling, and he's spent a lot of time there. This will be 6th season, I think. There's nothing wrong with him saying, you know what, I've built this. I've taken from National League to Championship, and I'm at my limits now. There's nothing wrong with him stepping away and saying that, and I think it'd be even more commendable, and he'd be remembered a lot more fondly if he did say, you know what, I can't coach these players at this level anymore that we want to get to. Let someone else take the reins.
And he'll go down as a legend at the club anyway, especially considering
100%.
how many leagues he's taken them up. Let's also talk about Blackburn Rovers 1, Swansea 2. Todd Cantwell scored again last night. He's been a player who has really impressed me lately. So let's talk about the positives that are happening at Blackburn at the moment. Todd Cantwell, how well has he been performing lately?
He's been performing well, goals and assists. He'd get a lot more if the players around him were of a higher quality. Just before Swansea scored the second last night, ball comes into him on the edge of the box, fakes the shoot, sends a reverse pass through to the new striker, Johnson. He doesn't control the ball, which is, I mean, he's at that point, he's probably like 14 yards out. If he takes one touch, he's got a tap in, more or less. I know he has to beat the keeper, but a high expected goals chance. I know everyone hates the data and all that, but should be scoring in that position. They break, they snatch the ball, cross comes in, edge of box, he fires it bottom corner. And they're the small margins where if you had a top quality striker or just a decent level striker, you go 2-1 up, you see the game out, and it's a win instead of a loss. I feel like he's starting to get frustrated. Probably should have had a penalty last night in the last minute. I don't know if anyone's seen it, but does a Cruyff turn on the edge. His trailing legs caught. I think he's played for it, but I also think it's a stupid tackle from the defender. So it probably should be a penalty. It's unfair to criticise Cantwell for going down when he's done a stupid tackling so late on in the game. But yeah, we didn't get it. We've not been getting the rub of the green recently. But I think it's just another excuse for how bad we performed rather than we didn't deserve a win. Probably deserved a draw, but we didn't deserve to beat Swansea last night.
And Swansea, they've started the season really well, actually. They're 7th in the Championship at the moment. What was your assessment of their performance? Because they have actually put in some attractive performances, haven't they?
They're just, it's not the Swansea we used to see where it's like fast flowing, fluid football. They've always got a shape. It's like they had a lad in midfield last night. I didn't even know his name, but I just saw it was number 6, had like a hand plaster on. It's called Staminix. So we're just having a look at the lineups now. And he just sits in the centre circle and just orchestrates the game all the way through. You got Galbraith in front of him, and then obviously the lads that came on like Liam Cullen, who we've seen in the Championship quite a lot. And yeah, you've got Josh Timon bombing down the left wing quite a lot. Manuel Benson, who we know from his time at Burnley. They're always going to be dangerous, but they were a lot more organised and a lot more structured than what I expected from Swansea last night. Usually it's a case of they're going to like play short passes and it's a lot more fluid movement. It wasn't that. The 6 just stayed in the centre circle. The 2-8 ran box to box. The winger stayed wide. Striker stayed in the middle. It was very simple. But there were times where they could play out from the back, but also they caught us out in the first half where everyone had come short and they pumped a long ball to the striker. He won the flick on, and Manuel Benson was more or less through on goal. So they can mix it up, and I think having both approaches will help them this season.
And finally, let's talk about Sheffield United 1, Southampton 2. Tyrese Campbell got Sheffield United in front on the 28th minute, but Ross Stewart, who has recently returned from injury at Southampton, has been absolutely incredible. Had an incredible performance last night. He scored a very quick brace to give them the 2-1 win. I quickly want to show you a video a minute there because Chris Wilder got given a red card under very bizarre circumstances. So basically, in case none of you were watching, Chris Wilder, in frustration, kicked the ball into the stands and it obviously hit a fan. So the video is currently loading on my computer. I have a very slow computer. Have you seen the footage there, Robert? The footage I'm talking about.
I have seen it, yes. I have seen it. I don't know what he's thinking about. I mean, the managers are paid quite a lot of money to keep the cool and keep calm and collected. I just think it's I don't know. I know I saw a tweet about it saying that they've got Chris Wilder back at Sheffield United because he wears his heart on his sleeve and he kicks every ball, but they didn't mean literally. But yeah, it's just such a stupid thing to get sent off for. It's just so unnecessary.
And I indeed have the footage right here. So I'm going to play it so those who are watching can see what we are referencing.
Here's exactly what happened. So they're walking off at half-time. Here's Wilder, sees a ball, puts his left boot through it, and then good connection in fairness, but the problem was he puts his hand up there because he acknowledges in kicking it, he kicked it into the crowd and it hit one of the home fans. But there he is, straight to the gentleman in question, apologising, and the fan, in fairness, had a smile on his face and seemed to take it all in good grace. But the ref...
I mean, this is a very nuanced thing to even be analysing from a game, but should Chris Wilder be given a fine for that or a longer suspension, or is it just an accident that happens in football and he was just being stupid for kicking it like that?
I wouldn't like to see him get a longer suspension for it. I think a fine to like a chosen charity would be a good gesture. But yeah, I wouldn't like to see a long-term suspension. He knows it. He knows straight away. As soon as he like turned around out the crowd, went to the referee, ref shows him red card, and he doesn't even argue. He knows what he's done is daft, and it's just a rush of blood to the head moment. But yeah, I don't know what could. Like, if he misses the crowd or it goes straight down the tunnel, he's potentially smashing one of the players walking off the pitch, or he's hitting an official that's in the tunnel. There's no. I could understand maybe like I've seen it before. I think was it the Dorking manager where the ball's like come over on the touchline and he just smashed it back onto the pitch, like, and I think he got sent off for that. But maybe like into the pitch, I can kind of understand it, but the way he's facing, the way he's walking off the pitch, it was only going to go horribly, no matter how the connection what they hit the ball with. It was just a crazy situation.
And we've seen managers in the past, especially in the Premier League. I think of Jose Mourinho, like kicking water bottles at Chelsea. Like, these are moments that, managers are paid a lot of money. Chris Wilder, I know he's in his third spell at Sheffield United, but he's still fairly early on there, so he shouldn't necessarily be losing his temper at a loss against Southampton, because Southampton, they're a decent team. They've just come down from the Premier League. Now let's get on to the main part of the show, because of course we will be talking about Blackburn Rovers today. Okay, I think everybody is expecting us to talk about the game that was called off a couple of weeks ago against Ipswich. First of all, I was watching that game and the performances. If this makes any sense at all, the performances were very difficult to analyse because the surface wasn't great at all. I thought Blackburn played the conditions very well. They were the better team than Ipswich. But this is a bit like, I don't know, the chicken and the egg, really. Should the game have been called off, or do you reckon it should have carried on playing?
The game should have been called off. The pitch was unplayable. I think I put a tweet out criticising Jack Clark for that. He got subbed on and he's getting the ball in the half turn and trying to dribble. And I just think, well, that pitch isn't made for dribbling. Like, you can put the ball in the box or be more direct, like Rovers were doing, and obviously getting chances off the back of that. It had to be called off because it got to the point where it was dangerous. Like, if the ball where he actually stops the game, if that's a 50-50 between players going for that ball and the ball doesn't arrive and both players just hit each other, you're talking it could be like 2 career-ending injuries. So it'd be stupid of the ref to play on for the last 10 minutes, and it wasn't just 10 minutes. The added time could have easily been 12, 15 because he spent a lot of time messing with his watch and his communication thing on his sleeve. So you're talking at least 20 to 25 minutes left of game time, and that's without any more stoppages, any more goals or that sort of stuff. I've been a bit disappointed with Rovers' reaction since, asking for the 3 points and the win. I've seen a lot of people sharing the stats, saying that Ipswich had a shot and they hadn't created enough XG to say that they were going to get back into the game. Literally just before it got called off, Leif Davis gets to the byline, pulls the ball back, Smodic is there, and Wharton slides in and clears it out for a corner, which if Wharton isn't there, Smodic makes it 1-1, and it's a completely different game. It doesn't count as a shot. It doesn't count as XG because no one's had a shot. But if Smodic taps that in at the back post, it's probably 0.95 XG, and it's a shot and it's a goal. So I don't know how anyone can say Ipswich definitely weren't coming back. We were definitely going to win. So yeah, the reaction to it has been disappointing, especially when the fault is mostly on us.
And I'll talk about some of the media's reaction in a minute. But here is a particular challenge from the game that kind of shows you the conditions that they were playing on.
Their leg. Tongue close like fucking prawns. That's a red. Here we go.
So yeah, Keeper could have bundled over his own player. I mean, Greaves had already been sent off in the game, but yeah, he was sliding all over the place. A lot of the media's reaction were in favour of Blackburn potentially being given the 3 points, or potentially during the replay being given a goal. Do you necessarily think that has helped things? Because again, a lot of the media narrative in regards to your side has been quite negative anyway. So do you reckon it just inflames the situation?
I don't know what the reason for it is, to be honest. I think just because it's so unusual that a game would get to 80 minutes and then the pitch all of a sudden become unplayable. It was probably unplayable from around about an hour, I would say. Probably around the time that Kipper challenge where he goes sliding. It reminds you of the Sol Campbell never-ending tackle at Wembley. But I don't know. I think because the media don't know the issues behind, obviously, the cancellations that we have in previous years and the drainage at Ewood, they just assume that, it was a bit of bad rain and they shouldn't have called it off. if they were actually there or watched the game or know obviously the stipulations we've had in the past and the things we haven't corrected. I think there'd be a bit more balanced approach to it, and there'd be more pressure on the club to sort out the issues we've got. But what we're currently experiencing is that, Burnley was still on, and Fleetwood was still on, and Fylde was still on. They had the same weather. Why? But no one even asked the question at why it was called off at Blackburn and nowhere else.
And again, this might just be me being very negative here, but I highly doubt that'll open the eyes of your owners, because usually it should do. If an owner saw that the pitch was unplayable, it'd probably do something about it, but nothing will be done, will it?
I don't even know if they know that we played. I don't even know if they know if we're still playing this season. No one hears from them. No one knows about them. So no one knows if they're aware of the situation. In 2021, so just after COVID, we had like an appraisal of the ground done, and it was suggested that we dig up the pitch, we lower the undersoil heating, because that's the biggest issue. The groundsman can't go onto the pitch and put forks in it and stuff because the undersoil heating is so close to the pitch, so they might damage that technology. So they wanted to dig further down, put undersoil heating in, put almost like a reservoir for the water to go rather than it draining off into the River Darwen. So it'll stay in the pitch before it drains off, and it should hold enough water so that any significant rainfall doesn't affect the game, can finish the game and then drain it out at a later date. That came in at a budget of around 2 million, and then we couldn't raise the funds. So no matter what anyone says about Ipswich not wanting to play the last 10 minutes and McKenna desperate for the game to be called off, it always comes back to the owners aren't investing in infrastructure of the club, and that's the reason the game was called off.
So let's move on to some other Blackburn-related stuff. And before we do, if you are watching live at the moment, then you can get involved in the chat over on X or Twitter, as I prefer to call it, simply, and I'm so bad at telling instructions, but simply click the video and it should take you to a separate kind of page where you can join in with the conversation. But let's talk about some other Blackburn related stuff, because Blackburn Rovers have banned the Lancashire Telegraph from all access to the club, and this includes fixtures, press conferences and the club premises itself. The ban came into effect ahead of Rovers' game against Charlton and stems from what the club describes as a series of ongoing issues with the newspapers reporting. And it's worth mentioning that the main issues centre around correspondent Elliot Jackson. The club claims, and I'm going to say claims because they are being a little ridiculous with this, that one of his posts on X contained false information and wrongly attributed quotes, while also taking issue with his coverage of club captain Lewis Travis's departure. They say this has gone beyond acceptable criticism, and this is actually a quote from the owners, into personal attacks. So this might be coming from my own point of view here, but I'm always very tempted just to side with the journalist here, because, you know, he's working for the Lancashire Telegraph, a local newspaper. He's obviously covering a club who I assume he supports. What are Blackburn doing here? Because it's very bad publicity for them just to be banning journalists like this, isn't it?
It is. I mean, so they were quite lucky, the fact that Elliot Jackson isn't a Rovers fan. He's a Sheffield Wednesday fan, which probably gives them the benefit of the doubt, because if he wants to talk about bad owners, he probably goes to his own club before he goes to Blackburn. But if you ask any Blackburn fan, he probably gives them, or has given them, an easy ride in the past. He's had some criticism from fans for not asking, not necessarily deep questions, but hard-hitting questions. And then last year, which was the last time I came on, we asked the three main people on the board to stay away from games. And Elliot Jackson got to interview Rudy Gestead. Andy Bays interviewed all three of them, and also Rovers TV interviewed all of them as well. Andy Bays from BBC Lancashire. There was a couple of challenges and a couple of like tough questions and not really liking the answers. And I think since then the relationship's gone downhill. I've actually got a video coming out tonight around the lies around the recent interviews and the culture I feel we've got at the club of not being truthful and just lying all the time. And that's not just from the manager, Rhys, that's from, it feels like every single staff member at the club. So I've got a video coming out detailing all of that. But yeah, Elliot Jackson has done what every good journalist should do and has investigated things and reported them to the wider fan base. We've got some fan accounts that have done interviews with players and want to release the report that they've done or release the video that they've done. And the club have said, you can only release that once we've seen it and we've given you permission to share it. Now, that's not how journalism works. If you've got a piece of news and some information that fans would like to read, then you're well within your right to share that. You don't need permission from the club. You've gone out and investigated it. You found the information. You wrote it up yourself. I don't know how they can think they're in a position to tell you they want to do that. They also said they spoke to Lancashire Telegraph management and asked them to swap reporters. I don't think that's fair. I think Elliot Jackson's been a great reporter for Rovers.
That's his job as well. Like, imagine somebody phoning your boss and telling them that they should, I don't know, swap employee. Yeah,
it's crazy. It's absolutely bonkers. What else have they done recently? Oh, so the big one is, I mean, there's no issue with there is an issue with them banning them from Ewood Park and from Blackburn Rovers, but they've also been ringing around some of the clubs that we've been playing away from home to try and ban access to the grounds for Elliot Jackson as well. So they got in contact with Charlton Athletic and said, do you mind, there's a reporter going down from Lancashire Telegraph, don't allow him there, basically. And Charlton said, no, he's a journalist, we have like freedom of press here, they can come in and report on the game. He was coming in and he tweeted and got loads of support from the Blackburn Rovers fans, so which he deserves as well. So yeah, it's getting dark. It's getting dark times at Rovers because they are being very do as we said. If you don't do that, then you don't have access.
And as Katie says, Blackburn Rovers are becoming North Korea, which, again, given how poor the ownership is, like, I can't argue against. Do you reckon the likes of Rhys and your owners are too afraid to get criticism because they're in a very sensitive place at the moment where they're obviously getting a lot of public backlash? So do you reckon they're afraid of receiving it?
I don't think they're necessarily afraid of it. I just think that if you get to a point where you're forcing them out, you're potentially like costing people a lot of money. Like Rhys will never get a job like director of football at Blackburn Rovers Football Club ever again after this. He really has to make the most of it whilst he's here, because after the disaster that's been this season and the way the season can continue, and eventually we will get relegated this season, Rhys will never get another job in football at this level. So whilst he's here, he has to make as much money as possible, whether that's through salary or whether that's through other means of getting cash that I won't discuss on this podcast. But yeah, he has to make the most of it. I think I used the gif of Homelander where he says I don't know if you ever watched The Boys, where he says, I can't think what the clip is, where it says, release the footage, I'll lose everything, but then I'll have nothing to lose. That's the point they're in now, that like you're leaking information that could potentially harm them, but once they've got nothing to lose, they'll lash out and they'll start taking people down with them. And as like the fan groups and the coalition that are trying to obviously get rid of the owners and get new investment into the club, we want them to lash out at each other and want them to eventually leave the club, but we don't want them to take down people like Elliot Jackson, like proper working class family people that are representing the club's values. That's the last thing we want. It's the people that don't represent the club that we want to tear into each other.
And I think they're their justification of it isn't funny, but it's absolutely ridiculous. Their justification was that they are trying to act firmly and they are trying to protect the values of the club, its staff, and its supporters at home, which, in my opinion, is absolutely ridiculous. An interesting tidbit right here. The English Football League confirmed the other day that access rights sit with the home club. So while visiting clubs can request media access for reporters, there is no obligation to grant it. The EFL said its preference is for maximum media coverage to give the fans the best possible access to their club. And the Telegraph's stance has received support from senior journalists, including Henry Winter, who criticised the decision, calling it small-minded and damaging to the club's relationship with fans, sponsors, and the local community. And he also pointed out the irony that the Telegraph has been one of the loudest voices backing Blackburn during the Ipswich replay controversy, only to be banned by the club days later. So yeah, this is all absolutely ridiculous in my opinion. And again, he's a journalist who has to kind of pay his bills, has to provide for his family as well. So to ban him from the club is, in my opinion, a really bad HR move. Do you reckon they have anybody advising them how to act in regards to HR, like human resources, or do you reckon that doesn't exist at the club?
I think they have got advisors, but I think like every other member of the board and the higher ups, they're just not qualified to do that role. So I just think what the things they are advising to do is just the wrong thing every single time. And the problem is, like, we used to have probably one of the best CEOs in football in John Williams. When I first started supporting the club, like when I was like 5 years old, I know everyone talks about like Jack Walker's money and like the investment he had that helped us be successful. We were run by footballing people and people that cared about the community. And like John Williams was so much for like affordable season tickets and like kids for £1 and making sure that football was accessible for everyone. Like, we're celebrating our 150th anniversary this season, and there was probably 6,000 on last night. I know the attendance will say there was 11,000. Ask anyone that went to Ewood Park last night, there was no more than 6,000 on. It looked like what I would say 10 years ago League Cup first round attendance looked like. There was no one in any of the stands. I think it'll be £28 a ticket on Saturday, which doesn't sound that much, but like, we're not getting any attendances. There's no supply and demand. Like, so why are the prices so high still? We had like a midweek price cap since 2020 of £20 a ticket. That's disappeared. Last night was £25. There's been no communication about it. If they came out and said, you know what, we're struggling for money, we've had to get rid of the midweek price cap, fine. I might not agree with it, but you told me the reason why. But instead, they just do everything like on the snide, on the sly that you don't know about, and it's all these subtle increases. Packet of chips and a bottle of Coke was £7 last night, right? And they took away ketchup and salt because fans were taking too much, and yeah, that's the level of penny pinching we're at now.
Yeah, like I was just about to say, it sounds like they're trying to save every bit of money, but why don't they sell up? And I know that might come across as like quite an ignorant thing to say, especially since I am a neutral in all of this. But as a neutral, I can't help but ask, why don't you just sell up? But I assume it's a lot more complicated than them just selling up, because are there any potential buyers out there? What kind of deal do they want? Are they going to do, I don't know, like a Chanzeri and ask for far too much money? So what's the situation going on there?
There are potential buyers. We know that the old CEO, I say the old CEO, Steve Waggett, he has left, but he's still being paid as director of the club. That's another situation in the dark that not many fans know about. So he was approached by 3 different investors with an offer. He approached the owners and said, here are the offers we've received, and they said, don't send us anymore. We're not interested in selling the club. I've also spoke to an investor that had a really good offer on paper. He's contacted the club and said, would X amount of money be enough to run the club every year? And that X amount of money was way more than what they were losing every year, what they were spending every year. He believed that he could raise it with his fund, and it didn't get back to the owners. It went to Pasha Sahel, and it didn't go any further than that. So I feel like we're at a dead end now. I don't think it's about money anymore. I think it's gonna have to get to the stage where it's embarrassing for them to own the football club. I don't know what that stage will be. If 6,000 fans on a Tuesday night against Swansea isn't embarrassing for them, I don't know what will be. I feel like if we went down the Chef Wednesday route of like potentially like interrupting games and stuff like that, then that could potentially spark their interest in getting rid. But I just don't know, because no one hears from them, no one communicates with them. So how do you know what they want?
And I was talking to last year a Reading fan when they were in a really bad situation with their ownership, and they said a very similar thing about their owner. So it is such a shame to hear about these things. And we were talking about this before we came on air, but you've also pulled your women's team. I don't think you've pulled your women's team. I think they've been relegated 5 divisions. I have got a news article to read here that I will quote from. Blackburn Rovers have made headlines for a controversial decision regarding their women's team. The club has confirmed that it will not continue in the Women's Championship, which is being rebranded as a Women's Super League 2 for the 2025-2026 season. And the key issue is money. Running a team at this level has become far more expensive due to the new league requirements. Clubs in Tier 2 now have to offer full-time professional contracts, which, given, this is my opinion here, the world that we live in at the moment, is fair and should be happening anyway. And they've also listed that clubs in Tier 2 also have to increase staffing levels, extend player contract hours, improve their training and stadium facilities, all of which comes with a big cost. And Blackburn argues that those demands are unsustainable, and Venky's have already, and I'm quoting from the news article here, have already been reluctant to fund the women's team in recent years. And this is despite the men's side reporting a 3.3 million profits thanks to the sales of the likes of Adam Wharton. So the money obviously isn't being redirected to cover the women's setup. Coming from, I don't know how to word this, coming from a point of view of everything being equal, it's a really bad look for the owners to even consider, like not funding the women's team, because we see out there with like the Women's World Cup, for example, or the Women's Super League, how big an audience there is out there for women's football and how much good it does for football clubs. So why in their right mind would they consider pulling funding from it? And why haven't they found the funds to even keep them in the new Women's Super League 2?
It goes back to penny pinching. I think the requirements that were coming in from the WSL was around about, they would have to spend around £700,000 a year to pay obviously all the bills and all the additional staffing levels and stuff. Last season had the games at Ewood, so that wouldn't have been an issue. There would have been an issue with the training facility, I believe, because a Category 1 academy, because the females previously were training with the academy, but if to have a Category 1 academy, you can't have the female team training there as well, so they would need another training facility, which again, like for a standard training facility, you're probably talking $1 million, $2 million. Like, it's not a lot in terms of like the billionaires we've got, and obviously just made £3 million profit on the transfers this summer, so I'm sure we could redirect that. Like I said before the show, our Sunday League team trains on a 4G pitch around the corner from my house, and we train on the half pitch next to the Blackburn Rovers women's team. That pitch is owned by Blackburn Rovers Community Trust, so I don't know whether they pay for it or not, but the players that come down for training change every week, and it's all very... I think last time we saw them, there was probably around like 26 players and like 3 or 4 staff members, probably not enough to put on a professional training session. I don't know whether the new girls that are coming in are on trial. We've had a lot of bad results already. I think they played Chorley, which Blackburn Rovers should never be playing Chorley. And got beat 8-0, and the goalkeeper got the man of the match. We recently played Burnley women in the Women's FA Cup, the Women's League Cup, sorry. So when we not necessarily folded, but got forced relegations, 3 or 4 of our players went over to Burnley's team because they chose to become professional. They finished below us, but their owners are willing to invest in a team and make them professional. So they went up to Championship. We went obviously down to Tier 5, but we're in now. So it's just a really sad way of seeing the differences. Like, their owners are willing to invest, which when you look, like, if you look at the state of the clubs 20 years ago, the situation Burnley were in, the situation Blackburn were in, you never thought that day would come. But even now, like, we went to Turf Moor last season when they were in the Championship, and it used to be a shed. It used to be a horrible place to go, but now they've got safe standing in the away end. They've got the electronic boards all around the ground. It looks like a modern football stadium. You go to Ewood now, it's dirty, it's grubby. The safe standing they put in is just... I think they've done safe standing for 500 seats in the away end, and it's the seats that we sell last. So if you've got like 1,000, 2,000 away end, like you sell that many tickets, they don't even use the safe standing. They just stand in front of the seats. It's just baffling decisions every single time. We used to pay for... I know it's going to sound like a stupid point to raise, but this is how much the penny pinching's going. So we used to pay for a guy to fly a hawk around the stadium every 2 weeks. It basically stops like pigeons and owls and crows like nesting inside the stadium and building nests in the roof of the stadium and stuff. He was a Blackburn fan. He was a local guy. He wasn't charging a lot of money to do that, but he would come every 2 weeks, fly a little hawk around for a couple of hours, go home, and that would stop any nesting from happening. They've since cancelled that contract and that connection with the guy, and they've tied paper pigeons from the roof. So, like, you look in the corners of the stand, there's like a string and a paper pigeon at the bottom that like flies about. It looks like a little Spitfire model on a string, and that just sums the club up. It's going from like a professional entity to a cheap £1 solution to fix that issue, and it'll keep getting worse and worse and worse, unfortunately.
And the Ballamask's right here. Is food good at Ewood Park, or has that been because you talked about the penny pinching earlier on in regards to salt?
So we don't own any of the food at Ewood Park. So we have a catering company called Sodexo, who do all the catering inside the ground and hospitality. We have a lot of third-party vendors outside. We have like Finch Bakery and the pizza guys. I can't remember what the pizza guys are called. They like sell pizza by slice, and we've got a couple of young lads called the Sweet Bros. Have like a pick and mix stall outside. So the food's good for people, but it's not provided by Blackburn Rovers, so that's probably why it is good.
Yeah, and I was just about to say, like, it's a shame. Again, like, I can say this over and over again, it's a shame to see where you are at the moment. So I just think back to the 1994-95 Premier League winning team of the likes of Colin Hendry, Graham Lasso, Alan Shearer as well. Like, genuinely, like, brilliant players who won the Premier League with your team. So I think Blackburn Rovers are traditionally a Premier League team. So when you spoke about, like, where Burnley were, I don't know, like 20 years ago compared to where they are now, and kind of like where you are at the moment, it is genuinely, like a real shame to see. And I think that is a pretty good segue into the next topic. And I'm going to be totally honest here. I was reading this when doing my research, and a lot of it just came across as kind of like jargon, if that makes sense. Blackburn Rovers owners have injected another 4.85 million into the club. The ownership situation, and again, I am reading from an article here, has always been complicated. The Indian brothers who own the club can't freely commit funds like other owners because of ongoing investigations into their parent company, BHPL. Every pound they send to Blackburn has to be matched with a personal guarantee. So effectively, they end up paying double to keep the club running. That makes life difficult for Rovers. The days of big spending and marquee signings from the 90s are long gone. The club now relies far more on selling top talent and reinvesting carefully into the squad. So this part talks about the latest cash investment. This latest cash injection was requested back in May and has now been approved. It follows a similar process to last October, when the Benkies had to secure a no objection certificate from the Indian courts in order to send 11.4 million across. These certificates simplify the process of moving money into the club, but they come with strict conditions. The 4.85 million can only be used for wages and covering liabilities over the summer, and none of it can be spent on new signings. So I think that explains it rather well. Beforehand, and again, like this might be common knowledge among a lot of football fans, apart from me, but what's going on with their parent company? Like, that sounds like proper shady shit right there.
So the initial issues started because they bought Gary Neville's house in just outside of Manchester, and it was basically like a farm, like a house with a farm attached, and they wanted to use it for their agricultural business, and they paid 7 million when the house without the farm is only worth 500,000, with obviously the intention of using the land to farm. Now, because they have to then go out and do the farming to claim the relief that you get on agricultural business land and all that sort of stuff. And eventually they've been investigated into it, and it turns out they were never using the farm. So we have like properties seized to the amount of what they spent on the actual house until they could prove that they'd used the funds correctly, and they had every intention of using it for like their agricultural business. There's lots of dealings, I'm sure, that we're not 100% privy to. At the minute, they've just had like an approval to the latest transfer of money. So I think they got like 12.5 million approved to send over without the £1 per pound into the Indian government. But they have to sign an affidavit to tell the courts what the money's for. And they won't do that. So that was requested in September. It was signed off and accepted, but they didn't transfer the money over. So whether they want to send the money, but they can't lie about why it's being sent over and who it's for. But like they've already been told that they can't spend money on transfers, and we did spend quite a bit in the summer, but obviously we recouped that back. Would it have been an issue if we didn't recoup all that money back? Would the courts have like come down on them for spending money on transfers? It's that messy, and it's become like the 4.5 million that had money attached to it, now the 12 million that has no money attached to it. When does it get to a point where either they either send no money or send all of it, and there's no issue? It's just getting really complicated now.
Do you reckon they're hiding anything? Because I just can't understand why they wouldn't tell the courts what they're spending the money on. And like buying a farm only to not use it, like why waste money on that? Because that is just as good as literally throwing money down the drain for something they're literally not going to use. So are there any murmurings of anything that they're hiding or anything like that?
I mean, we had the issues initially when they first came in, where they had the Jerome Anderson as an advisor, who was the SEM agency, who obviously signed his own son and signed players from his own agency, and there was obviously dealings there that probably would be frowned upon, to say the least. Rudy Gestede ended his career in Melbourne with Steve Keane, who was obviously the manager at the time, who signed all those players, advised by Jerome Anderson. He was, I can't remember the actual person who was it Adam? I want to say Adam Owen, but I don't want to get it wrong on your podcast. He was also with Adam Owen at Melbourne Victory, who was, they both went back to Hibs together. They worked together at Hibs. Lewis Miller, who he signed this season, went from Sydney to Hibernian. He's now signed for Blackburn. Adam Owen, who was Chris Coleman's assistant for a number of clubs and also as Wales manager. Chris Coleman belongs to the World in Motion agency, who also have Ryan Alabi-Osu, who we signed this summer, and two others that we signed this summer, or Balas Toth, who's a goalkeeper who's we signed last summer. There's just a lot more connections that are happening now with the signings that we're making, the people at the club, and obviously we can't accuse anyone because there's no way of proving. But yeah, obviously if something smells off, usually it is off. There's one, like I think you messaged me about the Musa Baraji signing, the guy that we signed who was injured, and he's currently in a boot trying to get better from this injury. Had an operation after we signed him, even though he passed the medical. It's a strange situation. But we couldn't sign him because we had 5 ESC slots and they were full. And we had to get rid of one of our players. We had a guy called Kafambi that we signed last year. I think he was on like 2019 maybe. If he'd have played one game in the EFL, he would no longer need an ESC slot. But rather than playing, we transferred him to a club in Switzerland, who was, I can't think what the region they're from. I want to say like Yvonne Sport or something like that. So Musa Baraji was also from a Swiss team. His agent used to play for the region team that Kafambi has now gone to. See, it all gets messy when you're trying to talk about it in your head. But there's like so many links between that agency and the players we've already got and the players we've sold and the agencies that are dealing with the teams. Yeah, it's just really, really messy. Oh, you muted, Ben.
Tell you what, that hasn't happened in ages. I used to make a really bad habit of doing that. But I assume the Venkies have a lot of ties in the Indian FA as well, because Steve Keane was very close to getting the Indian national team job a couple of years ago. So again, this might just be me with my tinfoil hat, but I assume they're also quite influential, kind of like with the higher ups in the Indian FA as well. So yeah, like this is all very complicated, and I could spend ages just sitting down trying to understand it, because why won't they fund anything? Why did they? And this may sound to anybody jumping on like a really stupid thing to say, but why would they buy that farm when they're not properly going to use it? It is all really kind of like complicated, and even you struggled to explain it. Just
I need a whiteboard and a diagram to explain it all.
It reminds me a bit of that Charlie Kelly meme, the one where he's kind of like looking at that diagram.
All the balls around the whiteboard.
Yeah, that one right there. I'm again like the article right here talks about some of the players that you've managed to bring in, saying that spending isn't impossible, as you spent money on Sydney Tavares on a deal up to £2 million. Let's quickly talk, because I've realised that we haven't actually spoken about Valerian Ismail yet, who is a very good coach in my opinion. He did well at Barnsley. Things didn't work out for him in Turkey when he went to Besiktas, so like these things happen. He did okay in my opinion at West Brom. What is the overall opinion of Valerian at the club? Because he has been very vocal in the press. He isn't afraid to necessarily stand up for the club, is he? So what is the overall opinion of him?
I think some people feel sorry for him. It's like asking a plumber to make you a bathroom out of like kids' toys. Like, he's not been given the tools to be successful at this club, so how can anyone expect him to? If he was more honest and truthful, although he'd probably lose his job if he was, people would respect him more. If he came out and said the transfers weren't what I wanted. I wanted a better squad to play with and wanted more quality. He came out in the Lancs interview or the Rovers TV interview and said that he agreed with Rudy that the squad was stronger than last season. That's an instant write-off for me. Like, if you honestly believe that, then you'll be judged on the fact that you are not seventh. That squad last season finished seventh. If you're below seventh, then you're not doing well enough because you believe the squad is better. If he'd have come out and said, we've lost key players and we've not replaced them with a similar amount of quality, it's going to be a struggle, I want to stay up, then I'm happy for you to finish 21st and I'm happy for you to battle and we'll all get behind you to do that. But whilst he's lying through his teeth and putting blame on the fans and the referees and the EFL and all this sort of stuff, I just can't accept people like that. That's not what we're about in Blackburn. We're an honest, hard-working, working-class town, and we respect people who will like get stuck in with you basically, and we'll all get behind each other. But once you show your side and you pick your side, even if and say, no, I'm going to stick to the people above me, and they've told me to say certain things, and I'm going to always be the victim. We're not victims up north. I know it's a stereotype of like the typical strong northern stride, but we don't have that mentality up here, and a lot of people won't accept it, and I think it's going to wear off quite quickly. Like last night, we weren't good enough. Saturday at Charlton, we weren't good enough, and initial comments were about a penalty that weren't awarded to us. That can't carry on.
Yeah, that's the one that I read, the comments about the penalty not being given. And even after the replay, well, not replay, even after the game got called off, like, Rayleigh was calling for I don't know, like the final 10 minutes to be played or something. He was calling for something that would obviously favour him and the club, basically.
Yeah.
So let's go on to some questions to finish the show. Thank you very much to everybody who's joined us here tonight. We have loads of people joining us over on Twitter, which is always great to see, and YouTube as well. If you want to ask any questions, then, and again, this is where I'm really awful at telling instructions, but simply click on the Twitter video and it should take you to a chat box. Or if you can't find that, simply join us over on YouTube for the final couple of minutes of the show. So, and again, I have no idea what he means by this, but does Robert have any pet chickens? If you know, you know. I don't know what he means.
I don't have any pet chickens. The area that I live in has plenty of farms, and we do see chickens a lot of the time, but I don't think my dog would be too happy if I brought a chicken home.
Oh, is that a reference to the farm, do you reckon?
No, I think it's just because we've had issues in the past where we've brought chickens onto the pitch in protests and stuff. So I think it's
real life chickens, like live.
Yeah. Oh,
really?
You must have seen this. God. You must have seen this. You must have seen Ali Al Habsi at Wigan carrying the chicken off the pitch. It's one of the most famous YouTube videos of all time.
Oh my God, I've just found it. And there were like chickens like draped in Blackburn flags from like dating back literally to 2012.
Yeah. Yeah, it was the night we got relegated against Wigan.
God, I've been living under a rock.
I can't believe you've never seen that video. There's a video of Ali Al Habsi and Yakubu in the back of the net trying to get this chicken in their hands. It's like ingrained in my nightmares now.
I'll ask you another question, and whilst you're answering, I'll quickly find the video. So this is Ballum. So Sheffield Wednesday look to be down. They have a points deduction, or a potential one anyway. Oxford City look to be the second team down. Who is the third team that gets relegated? I don't think Blackburn are going to go down this season. I still reckon there is quality in the team. The likes of Todd Cantwell. I quite like Tavares. He could potentially show a lot of potential. So who do you think is the third team to go down?
I think Blackburn go down. After last night, I've resigned to the fact that we'll be going down this season.
Yeah, which is a shame to say, really, because again, traditionally you are a Premier League team. I still say that, and one of my first Ipswich games was away, or not one of my first Ipswich games. One of my first away games was away at Ewood Park, and that was the game in which you won in 2014. And despite that, Ipswich still got into the playoffs. So any more questions? Just quickly reading through the chat. A couple of random ones. Favorite Indian takeaway order?
I'm not a spicy guy at all.
I'm
so
not. Can't stand it.
I'm chicken korma or lanti korma. We have an Indian restaurant near us called Shahjahan, which is free advertising, but it's probably the best curry house in the Northwest by far.
I'm just trying to find that chicken video.
I'll find it for you. I'll send it on Twitter and then you can share it later on.
Yeah, I'll be showing it to Rhys next week on the show. So a couple of more questions. I asked you about your thoughts on Sammy Schmodix earlier on, I think. That might have been off air though. So thoughts on Sammy Schmodix and Harvey Elliott from his loan spell a few years ago.
I'll start with Sammy Schmodix. So I think the way we played under Eustace, 10 men behind the ball, Schmodix up front, space and behind for him to run into, I think that suited his game perfectly. I don't think the way that Ipswich set up currently, because they're obviously expected to be one of the better teams and like pushing for promotion, that people give him the space that run into. So I don't think he's like being utilised to what he's good at. I think he obviously showed that in the Premier League last year, the amount of goals that he got on the counter attack, especially I think like the one against City, like summed up his game perfectly. Ball comes through, like he runs onto it, takes a touch, slots it in the bottom corner. That's Schmodix in a nutshell. I think if you're trying to break teams down in like intricate spaces where they're defending deep and narrow, I don't think he'll get much luck. But yeah, it's something that obviously if Ipswich wants to get the best out of him, they'll have to figure it out. Harvey Elliott. So this is like probably the worst thing about probably not the worst thing about COVID. That's really dramatic. But the COVID football season is that was when we had Harvey Elliott, so we didn't actually see him in person. And I always think it's harder to tell how good a player is just watching him on the telly. I think you see a lot more from a player watching him in the stadium. Sometimes like a player of like Harvey Elliott's quality, it's not what they do on the ball, it's what they do off it, and like they seem to always be in space. And I think Adam Wharton, who's obviously at Crystal Palace now, I think I said on your show last time I came on that he will be England's best ever player. And people always say like, oh no chance. But eventually people will clock on and realise that I was right all along. He will, in 10 years' time, people remember Adam Wharton as England's best ever player by a long, long way.
He's on his way there.
Yeah, and I used to watch him, and he'd just walk around, and he'd always be in space, and every first touch would put him in even more space. And yeah, they're just delightful to watch. So I'm gutted that we missed out on Harvey Elliott during COVID.
Yeah, and like Wharton, he's doing really well at Crystal Palace at the moment, who are in the top 3 at the moment in the Premier League, which is absolutely surreal to say, really. And he could still win a European trophy this season at Crystal Palace. Going to quickly read through the comments to see whether we've missed anything. Yusuf Ali, Ismail in or out?
I think you could have the best manager in the world and wouldn't get more out of this team. I don't think the squad's good enough. So Ismail in, but if he got sacked tomorrow, I wouldn't be too disappointed or too annoyed. But whoever they get in won't do better than what he's doing now. The squad's just simply not good enough.
And there are certain football clubs, and you see it a lot in the Premier League especially, where there'll be class managers. I think Graham Potter's a good manager, but he came into a West Ham team that, in my opinion, didn't necessarily have that much funding, weren't really being invested into, and he was set up to fail, really. So I think, in a way, that applies to Blackburn, and indeed other clubs like Sheffield Wednesday, even though they're doing quite well at the moment, and Reading when they were struggling with their old ownership, where whoever came in was set up to fail, really. And before we go off the air, I couldn't find the chicken video. Hopefully we'll be showing that next week. But I did find this absolutely awful Venky's / Blackburn adverts. I'm just going to show that. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
If it's David Dunn eating a chicken wing, then yeah, I do know what you're talking about.
Oh, it's that one. I'm going to show it.
that brings the English Premier League team, Blackburn Rovers, to India. Blackburn Rovers, proudly owned by Venky's.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but that is absolutely
I feel like you just punished me now.
embarrassing. Do you remember seeing that video for the first time when it came out in
Yeah.
2011?
Yeah.
Oh God,
Yeah,
what
I
was
think
the overall reaction?
we were
like?
on tour in Malaysia at the time. I think we played in like a pre-season friendly against Aston Villa, and that was the first time we wore like the Venky's branded home shirt. And then that advert came out that night, and it was just like, I think we've got beat 2-1 off Villa, if I remember. But yeah, it was a dark night. That really dark night. It just makes it easy for other teams to take the mick, doesn't it? Like, obviously the club think they're doing the right thing, and I don't know whether it boosted sales of Venky's chicken anywhere, but I don't think it made a difference to the club.
I didn't even know Venky's chicken was a thing. Like, is it kind of like what Venky's are known for? Their chicken.
They're a pharmaceutical company first, and then they have Venky's chicken, like a poultry division. They're almost like I want to say like they buy out divisions of companies and like introduce them to their portfolio. I think that's what they do, but like, I won't be able to pinpoint and tell you where they operate or what they do. It's just
and that is why fans presumably throw chickens onto the pitch.
Yeah, that's exactly why.
Anyway, before we wrap up, tell everybody where they can find you on social media and on YouTube. Again, we really appreciate having you on. It is always a pleasure. So quickly, where can people find you?
Yeah, so the best place to find us is on www.brfcs.com, where you can find all the 4,000 Holes podcasts. You can see the forum and what all the rest of the Rovers fans are talking about. You can find us on X at Kidder ST Noise, I think it is on X, and then on YouTube at Kidder Street Noise. So there'll be a video going out tonight around 7:30 p.m. So if you could subscribe and watch that and leave any comments about the lies the club are telling currently, then that would be great.
Perfect. So, of course, go ahead and subscribe to their channel. They have brilliant content as always, and you can find us. I'm absolutely awful at plugs, but you can find us on X at Champ Podcast, I think. To find us on YouTube, you simply type in the Championship Weekly. I told you I was bad at plugs. The Championship Weekly podcast, where you can find all of our videos. We're the first thing that comes up. We are on Facebook as well, and on all social media platforms, more or less. You can also find some Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, basically anywhere that you can find podcasts. And do listen to our interview from last week with Beck Ray Eneru, the Tamworth player who has aspirations of joining the Championship. A very interesting podcast, basically looking at the lives of non-league players and basically how much travelling they have to do. So do check that out. And as always, thank you very much for joining us today, Robert, and thank you very much to everybody who has joined us in the chat. I'm delighted to see how many people joined us this evening. I am basically rambling on because I can't find the outro, but until then, I will see you all next week.